So I was going to start by telling you guys update on the fundraiser. I am raising some money for some people with disabilities in, oh God, I've got to read this, Barvinkove, Ukraine. It's, I'm trying to think on my map. I'm going to guess Barvinkove. I may not get this right. I want to say they're kind of here in the middle. I may not get this exactly right because they're right south of Izium, but Izium isn't on my map, so I can't find it exactly. They are right on the front line of fighting with the Russians. The Russians yesterday actually tried to take over the town. They tried to break through the lines in that town. So the town has had a lot of problems, obviously. They can't get logistics. There's an organization for people with disabilities. They have a big center with 200 people living there, and they can't get any supplies. They can't get food and medicine, personal hygiene. So they contacted Harkovu Mir, which is the nonprofit that Ukrainian that we've been dealing with for about 4 months now, raising a lot of money for them. And they contacted them and said, could you please help? So Harkovu Mir got a car, big car. They're going to go shopping. Actually, they've already started shopping with some of the money you guys gave and some money some others donated. And they're going to buy food and medicine and, toothbrushes, toothpaste, all the personal hygiene stuff. They're going to drive to this town on Monday. They talk to the local Ukrainian soldiers, and the soldiers say there's a safe way in, and they're going to drop all the goods off on Monday. So asking you guys if you can contribute. What happened already was I checked with Vlad, my friend in Ukraine, who is collecting all the funds. You guys have already donated $1,530 in the last day. Thank you very much for that. You can donate if you go to my profile. The easiest way is to go to my profile. Not you guys. You guys, 1 second. Actually, you guys, I'll show you. For you all, I'm sorry, these guys. And actually, let me edit this. Hold on. It's not. It's and oops. Hold on. I'll be updating this. Updating this really quick for these other guys. I had something. There we go. Okay. For you all, you can find Vlad's PayPal. We're only using PayPal. Go there via my profile. Thank you, Chris from HR. Go there via my profile and TikTok. Click the link that says beacons.ai. It's a web address, and it'll take you to a page. I will show you right now, again, to make things easy. Beacons.ai. You see the web address there above the Q&A. Touch it. And it will take you to a page, and you notice the first thing on there says support Ukrainians with disabilities. That will give you Vlad's PayPal address. Send it to Vlad. For you guys, I've got Vlad's PayPal address on the screen. The last thing, just as you guys would give anyway, but as a gift, I will say, not as an incentive. Vlad has sent me a number of things from Ukraine, including a number of authentic Ukrainian military patches. He went to the local military supply store, or whatever it is, mailed me this. It is, I actually talked to him yesterday. This one is one that's currently in use. Some of the other ones were used before, which I think they're even cooler, to be honest. This one is currently in use. He even sent me a picture of a soldier friend of his who had it on the arm. They've got the Velcro. It goes right here on the arm. And it has the Ukrainian trident, the trident like Poseidon. And it is the one of the 3 symbols of Ukraine is the trident. So what we're going to do is, as long as you donate $5 or more in your local currency, we are going to just kind of pick one person at random, and I'm going to mail this to them wherever you are. If you're internationally, that works too. I'll mail it to Europe or wherever. It goes in an envelope. It's cheap enough. So there you go. So if you guys can help, I'd appreciate it. Vlad already sent the first $1,500 over to Harkovu Mir, and that way he said they've already started buying stuff. Basically, they're going in debt to do this anyway, but they've already started buying stuff. So the 1,500 will help repay and buy even more. So anyway, there you go. It's very cool. Yeah, they're doing good work. And as always, like I said, I prefer. All the money is going there. I'm not touching it. Vlad's not touching it. It's all going 100% to buy the goods for these guys. So there you go. That's my pitch. But I tend to like to donate this way because personally, money going to big organizations that spend it on staff salaries and stuff is not my thing. It's just personal, but I like to give where it's literally like somebody gave $10 and thought it wasn't enough. And I was like, no, $10 is what's it going to be? 10 toothbrushes? Literally, You are literally buying things for these people with every dollar you give. It's great. It's not just somebody's salary. So, all right, I'll stop pitching. Thanks so much, guys. So, news today. The Institute for the Study of War, which is that think tank that I like a lot here in Washington, D.C., that a lot of the military types follow as well. They said in a report overnight that Russian forces are likely emerging from their operational pause and are attempting to resume their offensive operations in Donbass. You remember a couple weeks ago, there was talk about an operational pause that the Russian troops were doing, but at the same time, it wasn't really clear that it was a pause because they were still fighting. Well, they were slowing things down. It looks now like they might be speeding things up again. Donbass, as you know, or as you probably know, Donbass is the name for the combined two regions in the east. Those regions are Luhansk over here and Donetsk over here. It gets kind of confusing because there's Donetsk for this province, and combined the two provinces are Donbass. Don't ask me why. It confuses the hell out of me. But in any case, the fighting looks like it's picked up again there. In terms of Donetsk, so once again, Donetsk was the one a little to the left, Luhansk, the one a little to the right, okay? Washington Post, Russian forces were able to defeat Ukraine in the main battles in Luhansk, which we know about. That would be Severodonetsk. Remember, that was the really big battle they had for about a month, and the Ukrainians finally pulled back and let the Russians take it. But the goal the Ukrainians had all along was to cause as much damage to the Russian troops as possible. So that area is Luhansk. So the Post starts off by saying, Russian forces were able to defeat Ukraine in the main battles in Luhansk because they deployed their crushing superiority in artillery to pulverize residential areas and military positions. Remember, Russia's its strength, but also the way it does war is using artillery. It just bombs the hell out of you, and then they move in with troops and everything else. Russia does have a ton of artillery. The Ukrainians have fortunately been blowing a lot of it up in the last few weeks with US, British, and some other European weapons. So they are saying, Washington Post is saying that initially the Russians did really well in the easternmost province of Luhansk, so far east of Ukraine, because they had so much artillery and they didn't care, right? They blew up all the civilians, everything. That may prove harder in Donetsk, which is the province just to the west of it. Well, the one they're fighting in now. That may prove harder in Donetsk, experts say, because Ukrainian forces have spent years digging defensive positions. So what this is about is Luhansk, the further one to the east, the Russians were basically already occupying a lot of it these last 8 years or so, right? Whereas Donetsk, the one just to the left of it, just to the west of it, most of that was free. So the Ukrainians, knowing the Russians were going to invade again, they invaded in 2014, knowing they were going to come again. The Ukrainians have spent 8 years building up defensive positions, which makes it a lot harder for the Russians to take over. That's the first point they're making. The second point they're saying about why this coming battle is even harder is the Russians are now the Ukrainians are now starting to make use of supplies of long-range artillery from the U.S. and other Western countries. I'm going to get to the artillery in a second because I have an interesting report from the local governor talking about just how well the Ukrainians have been doing and what the problems now are for the Russians. Kherson. So Kherson, which is a town, but it's also the region. A lot of maybe every Ukrainian province, I'm not sure. A lot of Ukrainian provinces, they've got the province has a name, and there's usually a town in the province that has that same name. So Luhansk province, there's a town called Luhansk. Donetsk province, there's a town called Donetsk. Well, in Kherson province, which is all of this, there's a town called Kherson. Okay, so the Ukrainian forces who have been fighting in Kherson, the Russians occupied it from the beginning of the war, and this is the area that the Ukrainians have been pushing back the most against the Russians, right? While the Russians have been pushing really hard in eastern Ukraine and getting some success, the Ukrainians have been pushing really hard in well, it's southern Ukraine, but it's the westernmost edge of the Russian occupation, Kherson, and the Ukrainians have been having success, especially now with, as Yuring is saying, now with the HIMARS, which are the Western weapons that allow them to shoot artillery type, well, missiles, rockets, up to 43 miles, actually even longer than 43 miles, but 43 miles is the estimate. So the Ukrainians have retaken 44 settlements in that Kherson region since they've started pushing back, which is great. That's it. The acting head of the region's military administration says they've now liberated 44 settlements. So a lot of that's going to be small towns and things too, but it's better than the opposite, which is losing ground. So they're still gaining ground. Russian losses, per the Washington Post. This was interesting too, because I hadn't seen an update in a while on Russian losses. Hang on, I'm going to sip a little more tea. The Washington Post says this week, U.S. officials and others familiar with the intelligence assessments estimated that overall, about 20,000 Russians have been killed and about 60,000 injured. That's a pretty significant number when you consider that when the Russians came in, they were somewhere between 150 and 200,000 troops. So somewhere between 150,000, so if you've got 60,000 injured and 20,000 killed means 80,000. So 80,000 of either the 150,000 or the 200, right? So you're talking either 50% of these guys are out of commission, or, maybe not really 30%. I'd have to think 80 out of 200, 45%, still pretty, or 40%, still pretty damn lot. So good news. About a third of Russia's equipment has been destroyed, according to Western officials. Now, the Russians are still going to try to bring in more equipment. The Russians have brought in more men. It's never ending, but those are still really good numbers. Obviously, Ukraine has had a lot of damage too. The Ukrainians are actually, they finally admitted that they were not going to release damage estimates until the end of the war, which makes sense because there's no benefit in Ukraine saying how many men it's lost and how much equipment it's lost. What's the benefit, right? It'll only make the public perhaps worried, or the other troops, hurt morale. So sorry, I've been doing tea to try to help my voice a little bit. There we go. This was a small story, but it was odd. The Russian Ministry of Defense reported on July 16th that the defense minister has ordered Russian forces to increase actions in Ukraine. I guess this means they're fighting back more. Sorry, I was looking to keep an eye on my dog, the poor thing, where she can smell when it's raining. Even though it's just drizzling, she can smell when it's raining outside, and she freaks out. So hopefully she's resting, or she's freaking out in my bathroom. So the Russian Ministry of Defense has ordered their forces to increase actions in Ukraine. I always find that strange, because like increase actions. I mean, and I realized they were taking a break, to quote, Ross and what's her face, but it's a little weird. It's a little weird, increase actions. Okay. Like they weren't fighting already anyway. Now let's talk about ammunition. Okay. So the Ukrainians have been doing a very good job blowing up Russian ammunition depots, storage for ammunition, using the new American weapons. And the interesting thing with that is the Russians, I've talked about it before, but just as background, because when I read you this update from the governor of Luhansk about how well it's going, okay? Sorry, I saw somebody saying I should try water too. I will get some water. I've just been brewing the warm tea because it helps for the weirdness of my voice, but I'll get more water too. The Russians with ammunition, because they are such a centrally organized government, this goes back to the communist days, but my guess is it probably goes back to the czarist days, right? Russia's never had a democracy. They've never been decentralized. So what they were doing, which was really stupid, is they were also centralizing all of their ammunition. They would bring the ammunition in, they would get it relatively close to the front, and they would have huge amounts of it, right? Which meant the Ukrainians would just hit it once, and you've now blown up, a crazy amount of ammunition, whereas in the West, we would try to spread it out more, so it's harder to hit, right? Russians just don't do that. Well, the Ukrainians have now, like we said, blown up at least 20 ammunition depots in the last week alone was the report. So listen to this. The Ukrainian governor of Luhansk again was that province furthest to the east, right? Claims that the intensity of Russian artillery fire has significantly decreased due to the HIMARS strikes, the weapons that we provided the Ukrainians. The Russians are no longer able to operate forward supply dumps. Forward supply dumps meaning forward supplies of their ammunition, their munitions for their artillery that are close to the troops, right? You want it close to the troops if you can, because then you get it to them quickly. So listen to this. I'm going to get my glasses so I can read his report. And then a little bit of an analysis from a defense guy I follow on Twitter. The governor says, they are afraid of Ukrainian artillerymen. The Russians no longer store ammunition in warehouses. Now they work from wheels. They immediately take them to the front by car. He puts exclamation points, which basically means OMFG, right? Luhansk region continues to defend itself. We can state that the number of shelling has significantly decreased due to the destruction by Ukrainian artillerymen of enemy, I don't know what BC is, but it's their artillery, warehouses in the rear. The Russians now work from wheels. That is, they no longer store ammunition in warehouses, but immediately take it to the front by cars. They may mean cars or trucks, but either way, it's going to be a smaller amount of it, right? If earlier, this is translated from Ukrainian, mind you, if earlier the occupiers had a significant advantage in firepower, now, thanks to Western weapons, we have made up for it and become stronger. So let me read the analysis here. So basically what's happened is no longer is it in these big ammunition storage by the front. It now has been moved back because it's got to be out of the range, 43 miles. It's got to be at least 43 miles away from the front so the Ukrainians can't hit it. But by putting it that far back, it's now less readily available to the artillery people themselves, and it's being shipped in cars and small vehicles that can only take so much. That ends up being a logistical nightmare. And guess what military in the world has the worst logistics possible? The Russian military. So they've just, and I'm going to read the analysis here by Phillips O'Brien, who's a really good defense guy I follow. Listen to this. One of those issues where people don't get the complexity and importance is logistics. If the Russians are doing this, meaning moving back, they are having real problems. They have a very rigid system of creating large depots near rail lines and distributing from there. If they're now trying to skip the large depot stage, they will in essence be winging it. They will also need a huge amount of trucks and excellent organizers who can show initiative to keep all their artillery, and they have lots, supplied. Not sure they have these. And then he says, get more range systems to Ukraine now. So he's saying that basically this is going to be a nightmare for Russia. If you're moving the artillery further back and you're keeping it sort of in smaller piles and bringing it in smaller amounts, imagine just that. Imagine the logistics of it. It makes the logistics, 10 or 100 times harder for whoever's in charge to say, okay, we need 100 cars going to this area. Who's shipped what? How much do they have? How much do they need? The Russians can't do it. So this is a follow-on benefit to what has happened with the Ukrainians blowing up all the ammunition using the HIMARS, the weapon system we've been talking about. John Hoover is weighing in from Ukraine. Hi, John. It's estimated that Ukraine has destroyed over 700,000 rounds hitting the ammo dumps. 700,000 rounds of ammunition. Wow. Of artillery hitting the ammo dumps. HIMARS are the difference. Wow. 700,000 is a lot. Holy cow. Okay. That is a lot. Yeah. No, good. Good. Russia still has a lot, but thank you, baby shoe. I did see the fireworks right there, but this is great news. Actually, let me look at a couple of your comments. Jens is saying they will then need lots more men in the supply chain. Correct. And they're going to need somebody who can coordinate those men. And they suck at coordinating. I mean, they suck at coordinating. And as you said, they don't have the men to coordinate either. Thank you, Poppy. Just see if there's, yeah, thank you, Leslie. Yeah, no, if this doesn't get better, I will. Elizabeth says, just reading a couple comments about this issue. Elizabeth says, from what I've heard, the Russians centralized their artillery because their logistics suck and they can only rely on rail for transport. So there are limited places to store supply dumps. So actually it's a catch-22. That's interesting. The logistics are so bad of the Russians, and logistics means how do you plan? What's the planning for getting food, water, weapons, ammunition, fuel to the front, to the soldiers who are fighting? You've got to have some way of constantly getting them more fuel, more ammunition. How do you do it? The Russians suck at it. All you have to do is go back to the beginning of the war. Remember that 40-mile long convoy that the Russians had, that the Ukrainians just destroyed. And it really killed the Russian troops fighting in the north coming for Kyiv. They didn't have any resupplies. Really bad, really bad. Anyway, very interesting. Let me see here. Then they'll need more men. Exactly. Let me go on. Actually, I'll mention one quick thing because I saw somebody mention it on TikTok. It is not clear that the Ukrainians are getting F-15s or F-16s, American fighter jets, anytime soon. There was a report yesterday, and I think it was blown out of proportion by some people. Basically, actually, I mentioned this in yesterday's live. The Ukrainian defense minister said he was confident that NATO would provide him with F-15s and F-16s that he's asking for, the really good U.S. fighter jets. He didn't say NATO had agreed. He said he was confident. And they keep asking. I think he was saying, I'm confident that eventually NATO will come along, or eventually the U.S. will come along and provide us these weapons. That's how I read his comments. Some people were taking it as being, NATO agreed. I Googled all over. NATO did not agree. So just be aware. I think some people kind of twisted it. Maybe not twisted. Some people misunderstood his words. That's why you're seeing some of those rumors. But again, hopefully, hold on. I am going to get some water, actually, because that way I can drink more, because it probably wouldn't hurt my throat. One second. One moment. Hey, you. Sitting right there. That's good. You're good. Don't worry. You're good. Very good. All right. Well, that's good at least. Good girl. Good girl. Well, at least she's sitting on the floor in the kitchen about 8 feet away from me, laying down on the floor, panting like crazy, which is what dogs do when they're scared, because we've got storms and my dog hates storms. But at least she's here in the kitchen with me, which is good. Because like I said, when she was in the bathroom the other day, it ended up being kind of a disaster in there. So, I mean, I was going to say if I can, it's kind of difficult to do this. No, it's okay, Sash. I'm not going to do it. I was going to show you, but it's too hard to do. Also, I have like some bills with my address there, which I don't feel like showing my address. I can try to show you the code. Actually, you can just Google it. Google Thunder Jacket, and you'll see the code I was referring to. Thunder Jacket. Any case, let me go on. So the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, the OSCE. I was going to say OSCE. It's not OCSC. On Thursday, released its second report examining war crimes in Ukraine, detailing evidence that appeared to back up allegations of rape, systemic torture, and summary executions. Hang on, do my water this time. Per the Washington Post, the second investigation identified, quote, 2 new alarming phenomena which were not included or paid sufficient attention in the first report. The first is Russia's use of filtration centers where Ukrainians are interrogated, tortured, and forcibly deported to Russia. The second is the practice of handing over some Ukrainians to the pro-Moscow separatists controlling the country's Far East. There, Ukrainian prisoners face potential executions. So, I mean, obviously not good news. Hold on a second. Hold on. Although I think this is BS. Yeah, this is BS. Oh, I think I just got a scam. Your delivery address is incorrect and the package can't be delivered. Now, I am waiting for a package from Vlad, but this strikes me as BS because the web address is Rongezhuan. Zhuan would be Chinese, I swear by the life of me. What a little scammers. Wow. Okay, that's a little creepy. That's a little creepy. Not to mention, why would they have my cell phone? They're phishing. Yeah. No, I'm not clicking, but that's really, really scary. Wow. Hold on a second. Shit. Hope this. Sorry, just looking here. Yep. It's BS. Big surprise. What little nasty people. But my favorite is using a web address that clearly looks at like Chinese. You know, actually, can I tell you the other really weird thing? And this is very weird. So, and I'm not going to give you too much information, but I am single. I use the gay dating apps because I'm a single guy. In the last like 6 weeks, maybe 8 weeks, I am getting hit up nonstop by hot young Chinese guys who all live 7 to 9 miles away. And it has been nonstop out of nowhere. And it is the weirdest effing thing you've ever seen. I mean, literally out of nowhere. I mean, maybe DC's got some Chinese people, but I got to tell you, it doesn't have that many Chinese people. Actually, as you're saying this, I'm going to reboot my phone because you're right. Rebooting the phone can help. The weirdest freaking thing, and literally all Chinese. I mean, they're always 7 to 9 miles away. Always. You know, it's so yeah. I'll get you one. Yeah, I don't think you want one because the ones that I'm finding, I think, are working for Chinese intelligence. That'd be my guess. I don't know what they think they're going to get out of me, right? It's like, what are they going to do? Find out about our secret humanitarian aid network in Ukraine or something? I mean, very weird stuff. So any case, China, speaking of China, so China sanctions. I don't know what paper I copied this from. This is either from Reuters or from the Post or the Times, I believe. Sorry about that. Chinese exports to Russia. This was the story somebody raised yesterday, so I figured I would read it to you. Chinese exports to Russia of microchips and other electronic components and raw materials, some with military applications, have increased since Moscow's invasion of Ukraine, complicating efforts by the U.S. and Western allies to isolate Russia. Microchip shipments from China to Russia more than doubled to about 50 million in the first 5 months of 2022 compared with a year earlier. Chinese customs data showed, while exports of other components, such as printed circuits, had double-digit percentage growth. Export volumes of aluminum oxide, which is used to make the metal aluminum, an important material in weapons production and aerospace, are 400 times higher than last year. I'm just going to leave that there because I like my TikTok access. I did see that too. Actually, sorry, I'm done with that story anyway. Joseph raised a point which I'll address as well. Joseph is mentioning the $100 million to train Ukrainian pilots on those jets. So what happened is Adam Kinzinger, who is a conservative Republican congressman who many of us like a lot because he is one of the top 2 Republicans in Congress who are investigating the insurrection, the January 6th attack on our Capitol, okay, to overturn the election. And Kinzinger is hated, of course, by the Trump supporters. They claim, my favorite is Kinzinger and Cheney, Liz Cheney. The two of them are the top 2 investigating Trump. And the Republicans call them, or Trump supporters call them rhinos. Rhino like a rhinoceros, but a rhino, R-I-N-O, means Republican in name only. So meaning they're actually Democrats. Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger are about as conservative as you can get. They are about as to the right as you can get, at least in our country, without being like a fascist. I mean, so it's pretty funny. Anyway, Kinzinger, who has been amazing on Trump and amazing on Ukraine, he was the one that early on was pushing for the no-fly zone. So you see where he is on Ukraine. Kinzinger added an amendment to the defense authorization bill in the U.S. House to add $100 million to train Ukrainian pilots on how to use F-15s and F-16s, how to use the fighter jets, in the anticipation that eventually we will give them access. Now, it has to be in the Senate bill as well. It also would typically have to be in the appropriations bill as well. So there's a number of things that have to happen here for this to be real. I'm not convinced yet that this is real. In other words, let's see what the administration says. Let's see what the Senate bill, because the way it works in our country, House and Senate each pass their legislation. And then if the legislation's different, they get together and work out the differences. So if both bodies don't have that same provision, they've got to negotiate the differences. Let's see what happens. But it's not a bad idea, because on the chance that we eventually do it, they were saying, I don't know if it said the training would be 3 months or 5 months, maybe 5 months. I don't recall what it said, but to get them to a basic level for flying these aircraft. So anyway, that's why I'm not believing it yet. It's a good thing, but Adam Kinzinger, I think, was ahead of the administration on it, I think. Washington Post, Canadian Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland. This was good, actually. The G20 finance ministers, I guess, met in the last couple of days, and Russia was there. So the West made a point of pointing out Russia's blame for Ukraine. And Chrystia Freeland, who's the Deputy Prime Minister of Ukraine, I believe she's also the finance minister, was there and basically called out the Russians. She said, it is not only generals who commit war crimes, it is the economic technocrats who allow the war to happen and to continue. She likened Moscow's presence at the meeting to inviting the arsonist to the meeting of the firefighters, which is good. You might as well throw it in their face. I did not know this. She has a deep personal tie to Ukraine. Her maternal grandparents were born there. Her mother helped draft a post-Soviet constitution, and she speaks Ukrainian at home. U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen was also there. She said to the Russians, Russia's officials, including those participating in this session, should recognize that they are adding to the horrific consequences of this war through their continued support of the Putin regime. You share responsibility for the innocent lives lost and the ongoing human and economic toll that the war is causing around the world. And actually, that is all I've got of that. I'm going to have even more tea. Whew. Well, that was a whistle in my tea, I think. Ooh, I'm actually going to pour more in here. All right, guys. That is it for my update. Thank you, Inspired Woman, for the crane. What else we got here? Eric is saying from France, White House affirms that a delegation of Russians went twice this summer to Iran to inspect combat drones. On the 8th and on the 8th of June, the 5th of July, drones able to be launched from a boat out of, oh, there you go. Yep, I saw that. No, it seems pretty clear that the Ukrainians are getting ready to sell the Russians drones if they haven't already. Jens, I'm not sure, out of 57 or 25. Okay, Jens may be talking to somebody else. Jens, I'm sorry, Eric also read that Russians are placing missile launchers at the nuclear plant at Zaporizhia. Oh, that's interesting. That's really screwed up. Now, Zaporizhia is this town, but it's also a region, right? So it's the region and the town. And that is where the big nuclear plant that the Russians occupied a while ago is. Now, really creepy. Why would the Russians need missile launchers at a nuclear plant? Because no sane person on our side is going to be attacking a nuclear plant, clearly. That's something they would do. That's very strange. It's very strange. Exactly. My tea is serenading you with music. John Sar says, wouldn't it be good if allies donated 20 cruise missiles each country? It's war, not just on the Russian border, but all of Russia. Yeah, I mean, that would be all-out war, but I hear you. I hear you. Dream Rover asks, has Russia any more loan repayments coming up? I believe they've got a repayment every month, I believe. So, I mean, they've already defaulted. They're just going to keep defaulting at this point. No one will attack the launchers. Oh, sorry, Pop-Pop. You're right. I'm being stupid. Pop-Pop is right. The reason the launchers are near the nuclear plant isn't to defend the nuclear plant. It's so that no one from Ukraine will attack the launchers out of fear of hitting the nuclear plant. So they're using the nuclear plant as a human shield to protect their weaponry. How absolutely sick of them, and completely typical. Wow. That is really screwy, but typical. Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. No, that was good. You're smart. I'm upset I didn't think of that. Right, and hiding ammo inside, I'm sure. Well, not a lot is necessarily going to happen soon if Russia has already defaulted. Belarus already defaulted. The thing is, because of the sanctions, thank you, Peach. Because of the sanctions, Russia already can't really borrow money from banks. The thought is that if they default, their credit rating goes down and they have a much harder time borrowing money, and any money they borrow becomes much more expensive. Except, as we said, Russia's not going to be borrowing anything anyway right now. So it's not clear if it affects them directly right now. Thank you, Dora, for the hat. It's certainly embarrassing, and Russia does care about their image and all of that. Are the trolls hitting hard today on TikTok? I mean, they always do. Not always. I'd say in the last couple of weeks, the trolls rediscovered me on TikTok, and they've been hitting hard, which only means we're doing good work, folks, I mean, somebody got wind. About time they recognized our good work, damn it. Well, I mean, fair question. Why don't the Russians nuke Ukraine? Because they're scared of what happens next. If Russia were to nuke Ukraine, then, first of all, depends exactly how they do it. Believe it or not, I do think it matters how they do it. For example, Russia you have these tactical nuclear weapons, which are little nuclear weapons, and they're little nuclear weapons. I mean, for example, you could set one off in Kyiv, the capital, and I had looked into this, and it might kill 1,000 to 10,000 people, which is a lot. But when you're talking about a capital of a couple million people, that's not that much, right? So they're small. I mean, they're horrific. That's still a horrific number, but they're smaller nuclear weapons. If they drop something like that in a city, like in Kyiv, then it's World War III. We're entering the war. If they drop something like that on a battlefield, where let's say they kill 500 soldiers, okay? But it's on a battlefield in the middle of a field, so they didn't do a city. Then you get an interesting problem for the West, I think, because I think we would go short of declaring war on Russia, but that would put pressure. First of all, NATO would we'd go to DEFCON 1 as far as preparing the US military for imminent war would be the first step. Second, Europe would literally be on prepare 100% for war at that point, which the Russians would not like to see. I think I am not, and I wish I were paid by the intelligence community because I'd be doing much better if I were. But anybody out there who knows anybody in the intelligence community, happy to get your support. So no problem. I would declare it. Well, or maybe not. Who knows? But happy to take your support. So the other thing is, if we don't declare war at the very least, and this is just for a small nuclear bomb, we would at the very least, I think, have to provide Ukraine with every single piece of equipment it wants. It would get fighter jets. It would get not even fighter jets. I think then you have, because I think tactical nukes, for example, an ICBM launched at Ukraine, or a nuclear bomb, a small nuclear bomb set off in a city like Kyiv or Kharkiv, then I think we're all at war. I mean, for all intents and purposes, we're at war. And Russia knows it. I mean, at the very least, what's going to happen is the U.S. is going to close the skies. That's exactly right. At the very least, the U.S. will come in, and NATO, and we will close every piece of sky not occupied by the Russians. We would close. I mean, and what that means is Kharkiv, there might be some disagreement, but Kharkiv itself would be covered. I'm going to show you what wouldn't be covered, okay? what the Russians occupy. I don't quite know what the Russians occupy here, but they're here. I don't know the line I'm saying. But this would be Russian, this would be Russian, this would be Russian, all of this would be Russian. So anything outside of here, all of this, like all of this would be covered by a no-fly zone. And NATO would tell the Russians, if you step foot, if you do anything near that no-fly zone, you are going to get blown up. I think that's the next step, because otherwise there's nothing else. I think we'd have to see. I think you'd see an embargo. I think the U.S. would probably set up some kind of an embargo of Russian cities. I mean, it would be meaning, in the Far East, it would be a mess. It would be a mess, but no, they're not. But what the no-fly zone does, we set up the no-fly zone, which also includes knocking out all of the Russian surface-to-air missiles and all of the Russian radar. So I think we would tell the Russians, you move back all of your radar and all of your surface-to-air missiles, they're gone by tomorrow at noon, or they are getting blown up. So you get them out of there now, you get your troops out now, or it's your fault. And then what happens is the Russians cannot touch any plane flying in the airspace. So what does that mean? The Ukrainians can now fly in their own airspace. So the Ukrainians can now fly closer to the front and start dropping bombs and things, or going into the front and then pull back into the airspace, and they're safe. So, I mean, this kind of stuff. Biden, look, I'm not thrilled with what Biden has got. Like I've said before, Biden gets a BB+ for what he's done in Ukraine. Biden assembled the international coalition. Biden convinced the international coalition to do sanctions that none of us thought possible. Let's face it. We didn't think they were going to get the banking sanctions. We'd like more sanctions, but none of us thought the sanctions were going to be this tough. We didn't. Biden did an amazing job doing that. But Biden, in the end, still has this middle ground thing he wants with Putin. And I think Putin using nukes would be the end of that. So, any case, that was a long issue, but I think it's an interesting issue. Well, the U.S. is sending a warning because another American was captured. I think that's why the U.S. is sending a warning to all Americans to leave. Another American was captured, and the Brit was just killed by the Russian collaborators in the East. So they're basically saying, we can't protect you. I'm hearing movement in the force here. Just seeing what else you guys are saying here. Kremlin isn't stupid enough to pull the nuke on Ukraine. They know it would backfire. And you've got to make clear that, now mind you, it's possible too, and they should have. It's possible the Biden administration told them and said, you use nukes in any form, and it is war. We're telling you right now, it will be war. Period. Chemical and biological, my guess is maybe they'd say chemical and biological. They'd give a little bit of a weaker answer, but the weaker answer would still be, might not be war, probably will be every single weapon they want, they're going to get for all eternity, and you're going to lose a couple 100,000 men within a course of a month, But you make very clear to the Russians what happens next, and so that there's no ambiguity, and then they won't do it. But yeah, I think the Russians know exactly, except Biden still has this fear that if Putin's cornered, he might use the weapons anyway. And I think that's BS. Laka tries to make their house a no-fly zone, but one or two get in. Cute. Well, that's the question, John. Oh, sorry. Let me see more comments, and then I will jump in to the questions. Well, that's the other thing. Yeah, because Ukraine doesn't have nukes, correct, there'd be no denying or blaming that Russia was the party. That's the other thing. Russia can't set them off and go, oh, it was Ukraine. They probably would try to say it, but if they said it, the U.S. would be like, no, Ukraine doesn't have nuclear weapons. You're in real trouble now. Let me look at my phone and see if you guys put any questions in the Q&A. Oops. Oh, my phone didn't start again. One moment. I had turned it off when we had the weird discussion about the Chinese thing. Hang on. Apple phones, iPhones they take longer to start up again compared to the way they used to be. Turning it off a little harder and turning it on, you kind of have to hold it longer. So let me let that go for a minute. Yeah, stress. Exactly. Stress was the reason they gave for the Brit dying the other day. He had stress. Yeah, because you were torturing him and you weren't giving him his medication for his diabetes. Yeah, no, it's horrible. Absolutely horrible. That is correct. They could blow up a nuclear plant and blame the Ukrainians, and they probably would. I mean, I don't think that's... Yep, Skarky, Ukraine gave up its nukes in the early 1990s, and get this. Ukraine gave up its nukes in exchange for a promise by the U.S. and Britain that we would guarantee their security. Ha, 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 ha. Sorry, Sash. Oh, I scared my dog. That's okay, Sasha. Sorry. I heard my dog jump off the floor in fear. Sorry. So there's that. Oop, hang on. Vlad is messaging me. Just see what Vlad is up to. Oh, nice. Nice. Oh, nice. I don't know if Alain is on here with us. Alain just gave 200 euros to Vlad he just sent me the picture. He was so excited because he wrote Harkov Mir as seen on John's TikTok. Thank you, Alain. I don't know if you're one of the people on here today on TikTok, but thank you. That's really sweet of you. He may have just seen it on the on the actual TikTok video. Either way. Oh, that's nice. That's really sweet. I'm going to tell Vlad, 1 second, guys. That's nice. I mean, it's nice that all of you give anyway, but that's especially sweet. Thank you, Heather. Just making sure I'm not missing anything else here. No, you guys have done great. I mean, honestly, I will tell you this too. Vlad even told me, he was like, he goes, I don't have family in Ukraine. No, I have lots of friends now, but Vlad had told me, he was like, I said, Vlad, I don't know how much we're going to raise because, interest is waning. It's a little harder to raise money. At the beginning, we raised a lot more money more easily. But he even told me, he goes, you know what? Even if we raise $300, it'll help a lot. I was like, well, I think we can raise 300. So, I'm guessing we're probably at 1,700 at this point, easy, which is great. So that, as I said, since we're buying supplies for only 200 people, it will make a difference. So anyway, yay. Let me open my TikTok questions. Boop. An update on the UK soldiers from Azovstal that were captured. Were UK soldiers captured from Azovstal, from the steel plant, or are you saying from somewhere else? I mean, there were the two that were convicted to death. There's no update on them at this point that I've heard of, right? There's no update on that. So I don't, if that's what you mean. If the U.S. really cared about Ukraine, couldn't they have done anything to stop Russia from invading? Seems like the U.S. is doing the minimum well, I mean, first of all, I think that at the beginning, excuse me, at the beginning that that the U.S. and the West, we should have put peacekeepers in there. We should have put peacekeepers in Ukraine, and we should have spread troops all over and said, hey, Putin says he's not invading. There's clearly no risk. We're putting troops to defend. Now, Biden probably wouldn't have done it. Also, because the American people wanted us out of Iraq and Afghanistan. He didn't want to put troops in a new war. I get that. Nonetheless, I think we should have prevented Russia from going in at all. And we could have done it by doing that. And we could have done it by giving them better weapons at the very beginning. We should have given them weapons from the start. I mean, we're giving them good stuff now, but even once again, the HIMARS, the medium range rockets we gave them, well, we gave them the systems that can shoot further, but we're only giving them rockets that can go 43 miles, even though some of the rockets can go 200 miles, right? So those systems, we've now given Ukraine in their possession 8. We're sending another 4, okay? I was reading in either the Washington Post or the New York Times today. Experts say that that the Ukrainians need dozens of systems. The Ukrainians say they need 200. But this is what I was telling you, that the experts I read said the Ukrainians need 50 to 100 of these. They've got 8 from us, 3 or 4 from Britain, and maybe some more arriving from Britain, and another 4 from us. They've got 12 or 6. I think they've only got 12 maybe at this point. They don't have many. And even the independent experts not affiliated with Ukraine are saying they need dozens. And if you're saying dozens, that's already getting you to 36, 48, which is about the minimum of what I was reading. So that is exactly what I think is going on. Ray Cray says on CNN, they said we're giving Ukraine enough to fight but not win. That's what I've been saying from the beginning. That's what I've been saying from the beginning. I mean, hold on, more tea. Biden has been saying recently, repeatedly, that we cannot permit Russia to win. And then later he said, we cannot permit Ukraine to lose. Cute phrases there, because neither of those phrases says Ukraine must win. Russia can't win and Ukraine can't lose. What's in between? A tie. He wants a tie. He wants Ukraine to basically be able to push back, cause enough damage to Russia that Russia is then willing to settle, period, but also settle at a better agreement, a more amenable agreement to Ukraine. That's what he wants. And I think it's nuts. You know, I think we give the ability you give the Ukrainians the ability to beat the Russians, and you tell the Russians, you know, you set off a nuke, and you set off chemical, biological, or nuclear, and it's the end of the world for you. You talk to them like you were Ronald Reagan or Maggie Thatcher, and you tell them, here's what's going to happen, you know? But I'm not convinced any president since those two, or prime minister even, maybe, but certainly president, I'll speak more on my side. No president, I think, has had those kind of balls of either party, you know? I mean, Reagan had a lot of issues, but the man certainly had balls when it came to dealing with the Soviets. And Thatcher, same thing. You need somebody of their stature to go, here's what's going to happen, you know? And you just, boom. No news. God, every time I bang my cup, I hear my poor dog jump up. Sorry, Sash. Every time I puts it down too loudly, she's jumping because she's, of course, waiting for thunder, which she's going to get at some point. Not yet. They said it might be, but all right, now we're good until 4 o'clock. Okay, that's good at least. And then thunder for the rest of the day. Not a good sign. Anyway, what else we got here? Yeah, that's the other thing Elise is saying, which is totally true. It has to be clear that unless Ukraine wins, Russia will just attack again. And that is absolutely true. And thank you, Ray Cray, for the fireworks. Russia's just going to attack again. I mean, whether it's in a couple of years or whatever, the same thing's going to happen. And what, we're going to do this all over again? You know? I mean, no, I agree with everybody else. This is what I think Biden's wrong on this one. He's got advisors, including, I'm told, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Milley, supposedly is one of the ones urging caution with Biden. So that's what I'm told, you know? So I'm looking at more of the... All right, see you, Kelly. Let me look. Another question. Training on F-15s. Thought the Air Force trained pilots for 3 years. Are we expecting a much longer war? The article I saw, did I copy it? Hold on, maybe I copied it here. I want to see if I have a copy in my, I take screenshots of interesting things to possibly use when I then later am on with you guys. Yeah, let me see. Here we go. The U.S. could be training pilots here as soon as next year. I saw, shoot. I don't think, no, I don't have the article here, but the article I saw said somewhere between 3 to 5 months, and they would have a basic ability. To Google right now and see, but it said a basic ability to fight. Let me look. Defense One or Defense News. Let's see here. Yep, a project could take months. Let me see here. Here we go. It would take. Here we go. It would take about 3 months to train the pilots to fly F-15s and F-16s at a basic level, according to Defense News. So, you know, I believe you. I believe you. I'm just telling you, they're well, again, basic level, which may not be anywhere near enough, is the concern. That's the thing. And honestly, if it takes 6 months, they should be training them now, just in case. Why not? There's no harm. You know, there's no harm in training them. But again, Biden, of course, first of all, again, Biden, if he weren't listening to all the pansies, he could, a word I don't use usually. First of all, I would train them anyway. And I'd tell the Russians, you know, if you stop doing war crimes, you stop taking more land, you give the land back, you took already, we're not going to give them the fighter jets. You keep doing what you're doing, maybe I will. But you kind of leave it vague, you know? Thank you, Louis. But you say, they're only getting the fighter jets if you keep being evil. If you're not evil, it'll be fine. But we're going to train them just in case, because it can't hurt for them to be trained. Also because after the war, you know, after the war, we may want to be selling them some F-16s. But let's see. On this part of it, Biden disappoints me. Oh, training F-15. Yep. Somebody already mentioned the U.S. telling citizens to leave. Oh, I talked about the New York City PSA yesterday. You know, New York City, I showed you guys the video of New York City doing the warning about what to do if there's a nuclear attack. Oh, I'm sorry, Elise. Of course, and I'm always forgetting your questions, Elise. I think it was good to to give people education on what you do in a nuclear attack, but unfortunately, that probably wasn't done very well because it simply scared the hell out of people. So, Elise, I am yawning early. I don't know why I'm yawning today. I thought I slept pretty well. Elise says, what do you think about the Mohammed bin Salman fist bump? Seems like Biden has a lot to balance: accountability for murder, price of oil, the Middle East. Exactly. So I think I mentioned this yesterday. Biden, obviously, is in Saudi Arabia, or maybe he's leaving today, meets with Mohammed bin Salman. They meet outside and they touch fists. Well, the entire delegation touched fists like this. Clearly, that was the agreed upon way they would say hello instead of shaking hands. The problem is, and I'm not sure what the alternative is other than nodding, but then nodding would be interpreted as a bow, and that would be even worse, an American president bowing to a king or something, right? But I don't know what else you do, because I understand the concern about COVID, so you don't want to shake. You know, doing the elbow looks goofy, right? I mean, two heads of state-ish, kind of touching elbows. You could, but that also might look too friendly and ha kind of thing. So they were touching fists. The problem is, you got into the issue where when they touched fists, you know, Anderson Cooper, who I usually like, I think was playing games last night. He's presenting it as a chummy fist bump, because, like, you know, guys playing sports and going, hey, yeah, you know, bumping their fists, when that's not what it was. That's not what it was. You know, it was the only way to touch body parts to say hello and be safe with COVID. And you could touch elbows, but he's a head of state. Would it not have looked even chummier having the heads of state go, hey, like this to each other? They would have looked goofy and like they were being funny, because it would have been very hard to do it with a solemn. They would have gone, oh, right? So, and the fact that the entire delegation did it meant it wasn't akin to a high five. It wasn't like, hey, because the entire delegation did it. It meant that was the agreed to way that they were going to say hello and keep it safe. But Maybe they should have done the elbows. They thought this was better. It looks bad. The problem is, the larger issue is the guy is a mass murderer and we have no choice but to deal with him because this war came up out of nowhere and, out of nowhere as of a year ago, but the war came up out of nowhere. It's threatening the global economy. We don't have a choice. We need Saudi Arabia, I mean, it's too bad, but, and this is kind of one of the things that I disagree with people on the left over is, sometimes you don't have a choice but to deal with people who aren't very nice because you just don't have a choice, So, yeah, I'm not sure there's much of a difference between them. I don't think there's any difference between them in some ways. I mean, they're totally different, but they're just as evil, both of them. Absolutely. Absolutely. But we just don't have a choice right now but to deal with MBS, because of the threats to the economy. I mean, and you could even put that to the American people. You could say, okay, would you like oil to go to $200 a barrel? I mean, that's the problem. You got to pick you pick your poison, pick your battles, and I'm with you, but you just can't always, I can't stand Saudi Arabia. I am all for lowering the hammer on them, but it should have happened the last several years. Now we've got this going on. There's no choice. We should have gone after them the last 4 years and we didn't. So, not to mention the only people who can rightfully complain are people on the left because Donald Trump was totally chummy with them. So the Republicans will complain because that's what they do, but they can't complain, honestly, because Trump was chummy with them throughout the whole thing. That name is familiar. Thoughts on David Miscavige, I don't know, Scientology leader, claiming this is going to be good, claiming the war in Ukraine is a part of L. Ron Hubbard's prediction for the end of the world, asking donations. He's asking for donations. Is this war profiteering? Yes. What could be done? Probably nothing. The only thing you could do is whatever countries he's in, be very careful and scrutinize the language of the donations, to make sure, is he promising anything? What's he doing? But, if idiots want to give money because it's the end of the world, then they deserve to lose their money as far as I'm concerned, But yeah, he's a scumbag if he's profiting off of the war by saying that. Yeah. L. Ron Hubbard was right. Yeah, sure. Mr. Dianetics. The bridge to Crimea has been fortified. Well, they're getting worried that at some point they're going to get Ukraine will get the weapons necessary for blowing up that bridge to Crimea. And yes, Johnny, according to the Budapest Memorandum, Ukraine lost its nuclear weapons in exchange for U.S. and British guarantees to their sovereignty, which obviously didn't hold up very well. So, kind of a pain. John Hoover, Biden needs to suspend the drilling restrictions for the duration of the war and get us back to energy independence and exporter of LPG to Europe. Yeah, I mean, I think he's doing some of that. I don't think he's going to have a choice. See, that's the other thing too, is, the environment. Well, I mean, we don't want to just pollute the environment, but, well, the other thing is also the pipeline. I mean, the pipeline wasn't like additional oil. That's the other thing. I mean, the Republicans are trying to scam people into thinking the Keystone Pipeline, right, was like new oil. It's not new oil. The oil is already transporting by trucks or whatever it is, and it would go by the pipeline instead. So it's not going to help with inflation or gas prices or anything else in principle. But nonetheless, we need more. We clearly need more oil and gas. We don't have a choice at this point, Again, where I differ with some people on the left. I'm not a big fan of oil and gas, but, until we can get rid of it safely, we can't be dependent on the bad guys. No, we're not, but Europe is dependent on the bad guys. Yeah, Scientology, they're kind of nutsy cuckoo. Testify as a psychiatrist testifying in the Arizona Senate. Wow, I can only imagine Wow. Yeah. Oh, interesting. So the bridge, the Crimea, the bridge between Crimea and Ukraine, the bridge is totally surrounded by missile defense and signal jammers to counter missiles. Russia's clearly anxious about losing it. Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. Um, yeah, Leah Remini, I know she's just gone like nuts on Scientology. I'd never have watched her videos. I've been told to. Some point I will. But um, what else? Oh, I wasn't even looking at. I'm scratching my head, and she's got a flower thing on my head. It looks like I'm moving the flower thing. Thank you for that, Annette. That was cute. Yeah, Tom Cruise is Scientology. I know. I know. Thank you, Smiling and Iggy both. Hatton lights. A chemical lobotomist. Whatever. They're Scientologists. Hey, Smiling. Thank you. No, they are the nuttiest people, the nuttiest freaking people. Um, they tried to harass one of my friends here in DC. He lived right next door to the mothership. They had, they take over, they're kind of like Starbucks. They take over like all of these historic places and then, overrun them. And at least Starbucks keeps the facade pretty. These idiots, moved into all these beautiful old mansions in DC. Thank you, Crusher. So they're living next to my friend Carmen, and Carmen is pissed because they're having something in their back, driveway, some party or something, and they've got, their music is loud, they're being loud, and of course he can't stand them because they're Scientologists. So Carmen puts his speaker in the window and starts blaring gay dance music because the Scientologists do not like the gays, especially. A couple minutes later, somebody knocks at his door. Now, mind you, he's in a building, of course, that you can't get in. They get into Carmen's building, knock at his door, two big guys, and he's like, yeah. And they go something like, we're here to complain about your music or whatever. And I forgot exactly what, this has been years ago, but basically Carmen, I was like, what did you do? He goes, I told him something like, go F yourself, and slammed the door on him. That's my buddy Carmen, and just kept the music going. But they're crazy. No, I read whatever that document was. Remember the document that came out about the Scientologists in the 1990s? And it was in court, and they were trying to hide the document in court. I forgot what it was, but I downloaded that thing and read it off the early internet in the mid 90s. Downloaded that thing and read it through. I was like, oh, this is going to be great. But all the crazy stories. There was a Washington Post reporter that was writing about the Scientologists. And again, this is 1990s. A woman, I believe, because she was simply writing a story about them, they showed up at her home in the DC suburbs at 9:00 on a Saturday night out of the blue. She never gave them her home address, right? Showed up at her home at 9:00 on a Saturday to try to basically intimidate her, which you can imagine a Washington Post reporter getting so pissed off that they're then willing to do like 10 times harder, but good. She's lying down. She's lying down on the kitchen floor now, which is good. Of course, it helps that I get her doggy downers from the vet. So she gets a quarter of a pill of trazodone, which the vet recommended for a dog her size to like make her sleepy. So at least she's laying down now because she's tired, which is good. Sorry, the weather's been really bad and all day today, and the dog is going to be just a freak. So, and it's hard because I feel bad, like I wanted to go to the store, but now I'm afraid. I don't even think I can go to the store today because she's going to be such a mess. Mine takes it because you use peanut butter, all right, guys, it's quarter. Well, let me look here. It's quarter after. I'm going to look at the last couple comments you guys have, and then I'm going to stop. I was using Benadryl, but she got so bad over the last several years that I wanted something stronger. And I told the vet I can't take it. She needs something stronger. And he was like, trazodone. And I went, oh, I know what that is. My doctor gave it to me to help me sleep occasionally. I'm like, that stuff works. Told me the right dosage. And, I've got to do the recap too. Eric says Zaporizhia is a key nuclear plant that delivered 20% of electricity to Ukraine before the war. I thought it was even 40%. I remember it being a very high number. It's strategic in many ways and allows Russia to bomb the city Dnipro north of that location, right, with impunity. Yep. Yeah. Oh, God, South Park. Yeah. South Park has a great episode on the Scientologist. I've seen it. I forgot about it. Yeah, no, Adrienne, I'm telling you, like it's helped a lot. I mean, she's still, she's not happy, but at least I got it to her a little early, so it kind of makes her tired. And the other thing, well, the problem like today is it storms all day, which is bad. If it's only storms for an hour or two, I find the trazodone helps her get over it much more quickly. Like she'll be freaked out for an hour and then she'll relax with me if the storm's going. Otherwise, she could have 3 hours of being like scared, Anyway, all right, let me do the recap and then we'll call it quits. I already did a lot of the Q&A questions anyway, but they stay in there until tomorrow. I can always look at them tomorrow. Thank you, Ray. Just to remind folks, we're up to 1,530 for fundraising for the Association for People with Disabilities, for 200 people with disabilities that are on the front lines in Ukraine. You can help us buy them medicine and food by going to Vlad's PayPal address. Oops, there it is. Vlad's PayPal address. You guys have it on the screen there. You folks can find it in my profile on TikTok. You will see a web link called beacons.ai, HTTP, blah, 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 beacons.ai. When you click it, it'll take you to a page that says Ukrainians with disabilities, and it'll tell you there what Vlad's link is. And by the way, gives you a tip, which everybody should be aware of. Thank you, Ray Cray, for the fireworks. When you are sending money on PayPal, you can choose whether a fee is taken out or not. When you send money to friends and family, so to speak, friends, there's no fee taken out. When you send money to buy something, like I don't know, let's pretend I'm selling these patches and you send me the money to buy it. You click it's for a purchase, and that gives you the purchase protection that PayPal does, if I screw you and don't send it. But in exchange for the purchase protection, I lose 3% of the money you send. So the problem is a lot of folks, even donating to me, but also I had this with a friend sending me money once. He sent me money and he didn't know to select friends and family, and it took 3% of the money. And I was like, what did you do? So whenever you're giving money to people like this, where it's basically a gift, you always want to pick friends and family, because you're not buying something, so you don't need purchase protection. You know what I mean? You aren't, it's not like you're waiting for a product to arrive. And the person you're giving it to, when Vlad gets the money, 3%, or I've even had it with some donations you guys have sent me, they take 3% because you didn't realize it. So just be aware. All I know is he's using PayPal because it's the easiest way to do it. I'm not sure what mobile pay is. I don't know what mobile pay is, actually. But it's PayPal. So if you use Vlad's PayPal, it works. The money gets there immediately. It's the best thing. It's all they really can use. They can't use Cash App and Venmo for whatever reason, but PayPal's amazing. People send it and he gets it immediately. I mean, it's been amazing, actually. All right, let me move on. The Institute for the Study of War in Washington says the Russians look like they're emerging from their operational pause and are starting to fight more. Where's my wife today? Where is my wife any day, I guess? Google. I don't think they can use, I'll ask him, but knowing Vlad, he would have, thank you, Inspired Woman. He'd be using Google if he could. Because he's a big tech guy. I have not lost weight. I need to lose weight, but I haven't lost weight, no. The Washington Post, Russian forces were able to defeat Ukraine in the battles and basically the Washington Post is saying that the upcoming battles in eastern Ukraine are going to be much harder for the Russians because the Ukrainians have dug in and they now have the Western weapons, the rocket systems that are really destroying the Russians. So that's good. Ukrainian forces have retaken 44 settlements in the Ukrainian region of Kherson, which is great news. The Washington Post says U.S. officials and others familiar with the intelligence estimate that Russians have lost 20,000 Russians have been killed and 60,000 injured in the war to date, and about 1/3 of Russia's equipment has been destroyed. Russia's Ministry of Defense is calling for Russian forces to increase its actions in Ukraine, whatever that means. Because Ukraine has blown up so much of Russia's ammunition, the Russians have been forced to move their ammunition further away, and it is now causing a logistical nightmare for the Russians that they are not equipped to handle, which in the end means it's going to be much harder to get the ammunition to the actual Russian artillery units, which is great news for the Ukrainians. The OSCE released another report examining war crimes in Ukraine, detailing evidence that appeared to back up allegations of rape, systemic torture, and summary executions. Chinese exports to Russia of microchips and other electronic components and raw materials have increased significantly since the start of the war. Canadian Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland told off Russian delegates at the G20 meeting, as did U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen. There you go. Okay. That's the summary. Well, let's see if it's a war of attrition. It's not going to be a war of attrition if Ukraine gets more of the HIMARS. Then it's not. Then it's going to be Ukraine blowing up a lot of Russians nonstop. And if we send them the weapons that can go 200 miles, it's going to be the Ukrainians causing all sorts of damage. Crimea is going to be cut off and in a lot of trouble. They may be able to reach the bridge between Crimea and mainland Russia, which is another area. Actually, I don't think that's the bridge. Is that the bridge people keep talking about? I think they're talking about a bridge between Crimea and the mainland of Ukraine, so to speak. But rather than between Crimea and Russia, that bridge as well being destroyed would cause massive problems for the Russians. So the Russians have got, somebody else want to jump in on this? He's asking if the Russians don't have HIMARS. The Russians have got their own equipment. I forget. It's not the Gimler. The Russians don't have the Gimler, do they? But the Russians have got similar equipment. Theirs is not as accurate as ours. Theirs is not, the military folks can weigh in here. Theirs is not as accurate. It can't fire as, I believe, as quickly. It can't be recharged as quickly, so to speak. It can take, yeah, I'm looking at your chat now, Malav, but I didn't see it before. The Ukrainians can basically refill the entire, basically can get the thing ready to shoot in something like 4 minutes or something crazy, I read. And maybe 4 to 10 minutes. And the Russians, it takes them like an hour. So there's lots of benefits to this on the Ukrainian side of what the Ukrainians are getting versus what the Russians have. Yeah. It's screwing up the Russians badly. And then the Russians have nothing that can stop it. They thought they had weapons that could stop it. And the weapon manufacturers lied to them and told them that the surface-to-air missiles they had could stop this particular system, and it can't. So now they're going after the people who made it in Russia. Yeah, the Kerch Bridge, but is the Kerch Bridge the one that everybody keeps talking about the Ukrainians need to bomb? Or are they also talking about a bridge between, are they also talking about a bridge that my guess is would be like right here? Is that another bridge they're talking about bombing? I'm guessing. Right? But then the Kerch Bridge, correct. The Kerch Bridge is right here. Even though this is blue, this is Russia right here. So there's a very strategic bridge right here. Hey, you okay? Want to say hi to everybody today? What do you think? Oh, I'll get her a treat and have her say hi because she's not panting, which means I've had the dog for 12 years. The look she's giving me right now means she wants to play. Which is good, actually. Oh, you want? I know you want to play. Let me get you a little bit of treat first, okay? A little bit of treat first. Here. Get you a little bit. Yeah, come over here. Come here, Seth. Come here. Here, we'll pick you up. We'll say hi to the gang. Oh, Say hi to the gang. You'll get your treat. All will be well. All right. Up. All right, a little bit there. Up. Up, 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 up. A little bit more. Okay. There you go. See, she's not panting, which means she calmed down. And as I told you, the lookup now, just so folks can see, this is how the Thunder Jacket looks. So it wraps nice and snug so that basically, like, I mean, I can feel it's just hugging her skin very tightly. Yeah, see? Feeling a little better now? Yeah? La, la, la. All right. Want to go down? Okay, you go down. You can go down. There you go. Good girl. It's actually sunny outside. I may even take her out in a minute just because it may be the last chance we get to go out. And at least she feels good once we go outside. But yeah, she's a trip. Oh, thank you for sending the money. Thank you. Well, as I said, they've already bought the initial stuff. They're going to buy more. Vlad already sent them the $1,500 to the charity to reimburse some of the stuff they've already bought and to help them buy more. And then, actually, I think he's just going to keep sending it as he gets it, because they're going to keep buying stuff up until they leave on Monday. I mean, Vlad's not going because he's on the other side of the country, but the guys from Kharkiv are going to drive down, which again is not entirely safe, but you know, I mean, it's actually a thin fabric. Is somebody behind me with a ball in it? Hello? What? Oh, okay, stop. She wants to play. We're going to play in a minute. That's funny. She wants to play. Okay. I know. I'm coming. She's jumping up on my leg. She jumps up on my leg. Imagine this little 10-pound dog. She jumps up to my leg and shoves me to try to say, come on, let's play. She literally just shoved my leg. But it cracks me up when they do that, when they just shove you. Like, okay, I get it. It's like a person, though. You know what I mean? You can find Vlad's PayPal by going to my profile, and I will show you. In my profile, look for the link. The link is that long one that says http beacons.ai right above the Q&A in red. It says beacons.ai. Click that, and it'll take you to this page, and notice what the second box says. Support Ukrainians with disabilities. It gives you Vlad's PayPal, and you can just use that. Vlad had 1,530 right when we started the show. Several people said they gave, and he showed the one guy, Alain, who had given 100 euros, which is like $100. So he's at least up to 1,630. I'm going to guess he's up to 17, maybe even 1,800. You know, that's very funny. Eric asked if I've trained Sasha to bark when seeing Putin on TV. That would be very funny, actually. That would be very funny. I've not been able to train her to bark. I mean, she'll bark like that if I'm like chasing her. I was doing this to her, right? That she'll do, but that would be pretty cool. Yeah, so my guess is we're up to at least 1,700. I'm trying not to bother Vlad too much because he has to keep checking the PayPal account. But I usually ask him, like, I'll probably ask him, well, I may ask him before he goes to bed. They're 7 hours ahead, so it's already 10:30 out there. I may just let him be. The dog talking buttons. I know. I heard about that. Oof. All right, guys. You know what? Let me get going. As always, my voice has been a little better today, but I'd like to keep it that way. We are on again tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern. All right. Same bat time, same bat channel. All right. Sayonara. All right. Yep, exactly. I'm going to take her out. It's nice. Look at it. It actually cleared up. Wow. I mean, it cleared up for now, at least. That's good. Yeah, it's going to be humid out, but at least I can get her. Let me look. Yeah, they're saying no storms until 5. Perfect. I can take her. It's going to be too hot, but at least I can take her out for a bit. All right, guys. I'll see you tomorrow, 2 p.m. Eastern. And thank you again for the donations. Appreciate it.